joining us across the East African region. It's a beautiful Thursday afternoon, and I hope you're all keeping safe and hope you are all well. Now, I know for the first time in a very long while, we do have the Ramadan period commencing at the same time with the Catholic Lent period. So Ramadan Kareem to our dear friends and happy Lent to our colleagues in the Catholic faith. And we hope you are all doing well, and we pray for blessings in this season uh, of consecration. So this afternoon, friends, we are having an interesting session on the global competence of an African lawyer. And if you're joining us, please know that our session is streaming live on Zoom, and we are live on YouTube. And we'll be also sharing a live feed on Facebook. So if you have a friend who may benefit from this session, please tell them to tell a friend that our session is on, and we have begun the same, and we look forward to seeing you shortly. Just a few housekeeping rules. We do have a question and answer segment on this webinar session, so please do feel free to ask your question or answer to any of our esteemed panelists. But we also have a chat room where you can, feel free to chat, say hi to the panelists, say hi to colleagues that are joining us. And we all hope to have a very wonderful time together this afternoon. So on behalf of the East Africa Law Society, it's certainly my great honor to welcome us all to this very interesting conversation. Now, today's theme, friends, is not about collecting degrees, experimenting AI tools, or even accumulating credentials for the sake of prestige. This theme is about strategic positioning in a rapidly evolving global legal sector. Now, as we all know, our legal profession is constantly going through structural shifts. And precisely in this era, we have our profession going through what I would like to term three structural shifts that are happening simultaneously. The first one is, jurisdiction is becoming porous. Legal influence is no longer confined by geography. And the second one is technology is compressing expertise cycles. What once took decades for us to master, friends, can now be disrupted in years. The third one is credentials, my dear friends, are no longer local decorations because they function as global signal markers of credibility across borders. And as we all know, the lawyer who thrives in this era is not just simply working harder, they are working deliberately, they are positioning intelligently, and they are thinking systematically. So global competence, my dear friends, is not defined by where we practice. It is rather defined by the competence that is legible beyond where we practice. And that's the inquiry, friends, that we are making this afternoon. And we begin with a keynote address this afternoon from a jurist whom I've grown to respect and admire. His career reflects the intersection of domestic judicial service, international criminal justice, institutional reform, and global human rights advocacy. The Honorable Judge Peter Hubbard, OBE, retired in 2022 following more than 4 decades of distinguished service at the bar in the United Kingdom. He specialized in high-profile human rights litigation, employment law, family law, deaths in custody, and serious criminal trials, including murder and terrorism cases. Internationally, He served as lead counsel before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in the landmark cases of prosecutor versus John Bosco Barriagwinza, the prosecutor versus Augustine Ngira Batware, contributing to the development of international criminal jurisprudence at the highest level. Judge Peter has served as a recorder in the Crown Court, a part-time immigration judge for over 2 decades, an employment tribunal judge, a vice chair of the Metropolitan Police Authority. And as vice chair, he established Europe's first multi-agency race hate crime forum, significantly improving accountability mechanisms and sanction detection rates. He's trained over 1,600 judges across England and Wales on equality and race issues, and he's chaired major mental health homicide inquiries for the UK Department of Health. He's advised on prison reform initiatives across Africa and the United States, and has played a leading role in diaspora diplomacy and reparations dialogues. He was awarded the Order of the British Empire for the services to human rights and diversity, and continues to engage internationally on justice reform, election observation, and anti-discrimination frameworks. Judge Herbert operates where law intersects with power, accountability, and institutional transformation. My Lord, allow me to frame your address around one central tension. In today's global legal ecosystem, is competence primarily a function of skill, credibility, or strategic visibility? My Lord, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby, for that marvelous introduction. I was impressed myself, but I also have slightly a tendency to underplay my involvement, given the history of our people, both in the diaspora and on the continent. So I'm honored to be speaking to the East African Law Society members who are joined on. And for those who are listening, distinguished members of the judiciary, leaders of bars and law society, and esteemed colleagues, young lawyers in particular, and law students across the continent, and those that are happening to listen in the diaspora, brothers and sisters. This is a subject that goes to the very heart of the African legal profession in the 21st century, global competence, as Gabby has said, and what it truly means for the African lawyer in an era of profound technological, geopolitical, and ethical transformation. But let me pause there for one moment. Before there were lawyers, there were people providing legal functions in the kingdoms of Timbuktu and Mali, and at the court of Zimbabwe. So we were the first lawyers, and we are some of the best lawyers on the planet. So I think we have to remember sometimes our own history, and everything I say in this address is couched within that context. I thank the East African Law Society not merely for the invitation, but for its continuing role as a custodian of professional standards, regional integration, and legal excellence at a time when the rule of law is being tested across jurisdictions, continents, and institutions. And I know certainly the law societies of Kenya, Tanzania, the East African Law Society, and Uganda have often been at the forefront of speaking out and holding governments very necessarily to account. So today's discussion is not about imitation. It is not about asking Africa how we can catch up with the world. Rather, it is about asking how African lawyers can lead, shape, and influence the global legal order while remaining firmly anchored in African values, culture, and lived realities. The evolved meaning of global competence can be defined as being in most of the last century, it was narrowly understood. It was meant exposure to foreign jurisdictions, fluency in international instruments, or qualifications in London, New York, or Paris. In essence, it was driven by the realities of who the colonizers were and by the legal systems which they have largely forced the world to adopt. And therefore, those experiences still matter, but they are no longer sufficient. Today, global competence is not defined by geography, it is defined by capability. and it is likely to be spoken in Mandarin, in other languages, Gujarat, Hindi. It is likely to be spoken in Swahili, and therefore we should not constrain ourselves to the lingua francas that, in a sense, are commonly understood at the bar of the American Bar Association or the UK bar, where English predominates. However, a globally competent African lawyer must be able to operate confidently across borders, legal systems, and cultures, and understand how domestic law intersects with international regulation, and to anticipate how technology, markets, and politics reshape legal practice in real time. Crucially, global competence is not about abandoning national or regional identity. On the contrary, the most effective global lawyers are those who understand where they come from, who speak with authenticity, and who bring distinctive legal traditions into global conversations. Nelson Mandela was a lawyer, and you'll recall the words he spoke at the Ravona trial reverberated around the liberation movements across the continent and in the diaspora. He was a lawyer, but he was an African first, and therefore that is something that drove his legal jurisprudence of many who followed him. We do not need lawyers trained to sound like someone else. We do not need to sound English or American or Portuguese or Spanish or Arabic. Africa needs lawyers trained to think critically, act ethically, and advocate fearlessly at home and abroad. And those of you who have seen the lawyers of African descent appear at the International Criminal Court taking on the genocide that has been perpetrated in Gaza will know too well that we hold to an extremely brave and courageous profession, which is also capable of real critical thinking and analysis. There was one anecdote, and I hesitate to say many because, you know, when you get older, you tend to take a lot of stories. But one of the ones that I recall is that when I was at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, I had an interaction with an African-American advocate who forgot to say hello in the lift, but leaving that aside, I saw the next day at a seminar being put on by the UN ICTR. And it was to get American lawyers to teach African lawyers about advocacy. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable, and especially as she proceeded to tell everybody from all parts of the continent, the diaspora, Martinique, from Ivory Coast, from Kenya, Malawi, etc., that in fact this was the first time that video recordings were being used on the continent to help lawyers to understand their profession. And at some point I had to interject and just remind the Americans that actually they were the people who were taught advocacy by people of African descent and the enslaved, and not the other way around. And it was something that I think certainly Americans, whether African American or not, had to be reminded about our history and our values and our culture. What do we say about advanced degrees in international legal education? Let me begin with that. There is no question that postgraduate study, whether in constitutional law, commercial law, human rights, international arbitration, or regulatory governance, can be transformative. It sharpens analytical discipline, exposes lawyers to comparative reasoning, and builds professional networks that endure for decades. But we must be clear. The value of an international degree does not lie in the certificate, but in its application. As the Reverend Al Sharpton once said, do not obtain a degree from your former colonial masters, become a master of your degree. And therein lies the rub. An African lawyer who studies abroad must return, not necessarily physically, but intellectually, with a commitment to relevance. The question is never, where did you study, but rather, what problems can you now solve? And I will deal with this later on. And what you do in your professional life is not your sole reality. This should be what you are paid to do. It is what you do outside of your professional life which makes a real difference. So equally importantly, Africa must continue to strengthen its own centers of excellence. Our law schools, our judicial institutions and professional academies must become exporters of thought leadership, not merely consumers of it. So for that, to use a pun from the US, which I rarely do, Africa first. And therefore, if you go to whether it's Catholic University of Eastern Africa or it's any law school in Pretoria or Johannesburg or anywhere else on the continent, we need to see our legal textbooks. We do not need necessarily to have taught or written about solely by anglicized academics or lecturers, but by our own people. Global competence means moving confidently between systems, common law, civil law, customary law, and hybrid jurisdictions, while understanding how international norms are translated into African constitutional and commercial realities. Just pausing there, I co-chair Bandung Africa, which is a small international NGO connecting the continent with the diaspora. And the non-aligned movement, when it met in 1955, had 10 fundamental principles taken from the UN Charter, which were written by people of African and Asian descent. And therefore, those 10 principles, which I don't need to repeat for you, are some of the fundamental bedrocks of international law, which we still use today. Let's look at arbitration, mediation, and the rise of African dispute resolution. And those of you who know the background of the genocide in Rwanda know that, in actual fact, far more people received a far higher standard of justice, I might say, from the Gacaca courts in Rwanda than they did from the International Criminal Tribunal, which was, generally speaking, extremely expensive and a very slow system to deliver any justice for the vast majority of people. Necessary, but it could have been done a lot better. One of the most powerful illustrations of Africa's growing legal influence lies in arbitration and mediation, therefore. Across the continent, we are witnessing a decisive shift away from exporting African disputes to foreign seats. Regional arbitration centers, mediation frameworks, and treaty-based mechanisms are increasingly shaping how disputes are resolved. The Kenyan Center for Arbitrators is a classic example of this. For the African lawyer, qualifications in arbitration and mediation are no longer optional enhancements. They are core professional tools, which I would urge anybody to adopt. They equip lawyers to operate in investor-state disputes, cross-border commercial transactions, infrastructure projects, and public-private partnerships. They also promote a culture of dialogue, proportionality, and problem-solving. These are values deeply rooted in African traditions of consensus and reconciliation. Global competence therefore requires not only knowledge of international arbitral rules, but confidence in African-based dispute resolution as a credible global standard. We are not people who reach for the conflict button or seek for weapons of mass destruction in a legal sense. We are people who ought to be able to mediate, dialogue, and obtain a consensus. And one of the things that Arusha was famous for, apart from Mount Kilimanjaro, is the fact that it was meant to be the center for some of the best accords, not all perfect, that meant to bring peace to the continent. What of artificial intelligence and the future of legal practice, which is of great concern, particular to younger colleagues? No discussion of future-ready lawyering can avoid the question of AI. AI is already transforming legal research, document review, contract analysis, litigation strategy, and regulatory compliance. It is not, however, a future threat. It is a present reality. The danger for African lawyers is that not that AI will replace us. The danger is that lawyers who understand AI will replace those who do not. I was a bit of a dinosaur. I'm learning not to be a dinosaur. Although dinosaurs did rule the earth for 160 million years, I don't think lawyers who practice without AI will be as successful. We have to get with it sooner. Global competence today requires digital literacy and understanding of how AI tools work, where their biases lie, how they intersect with data protection. ChatGPT, for instance, is owned by a billionaire who is part of the far-right agenda in the US. So you might guess that it's going to have biases against and for in benefit of racism and a benefit of white superiority, allegedly. So ethics are important in how they can be used responsibly to enhance access to justice rather than restrict it. African lawyers or lawyers of African descent must be participants in shaping AI governance, not passive recipients of external regulatory models. If you get a model which has been written in New York or Paris or Rio de Janeiro, question it and say, why shouldn't it be written here? Our perspectives on equity, language, diversity, informal economics, and systemic inequality are essential to global debates on technology and law. AI must serve justice, not efficiency alone. And while we're at it, you may, as a judge, as a jurist, look to a future where sentencing is done by AI. That cannot ever be a replacement for first-hand personal knowledge or the feel of somebody who is standing in front of you. So as an advocate, my next subsection, you have to be a voice and a guardian for the people you serve. At the core of legal competence, global or otherwise, clearly then lies advocacy. Advocacy is not confined to the courtroom. It is the ability to persuade, to frame issues clearly, and to defend the vulnerable, and to hold power to account. And one of my colleagues, Benjamin Crump, who represented George Floyd, shows exactly how sometimes, particularly in human rights cases and in others, the majority of the battle is fought outside court. It's fought in the media, on the doorsteps, in community meetings, and long before the case enters the courtroom doors, the scene has been set by a lawyer who is an advocate for the people they represent, the companies, and they're able to frame their discussion with the full light of publicity and not shy away from it. A globally competent African lawyer must be able to advocate before domestic courts, regional tribunals, international bodies, regulatory agencies, and public forums. That requires mastery of law, yes, but also courage, ethical clarity, intellectual independence, and the ability sometimes to talk to the media. This is an age of social media. And if you have the ability and the rules allow, you should be able to put forward your client's case within social media. Why not? In an age where civic space is narrowing in many jurisdictions, the advocate's role as a guardian of constitutionalism becomes even more vital. Silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. Silence in the face of injustice amounts to acquiescence. And so whether you lie and your practice rests in Tanzania or in Nigeria or anywhere else on the continent, including the United States, where human rights are being assailed by those in power and authority, silence is acquiescence. You must speak up. The African lawyer must therefore be prepared to stand, sometimes alone, between authority and abuse, between power and principle. And you will know that those in the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo, and others have been at the forefront of holding the Kenyan government to account, for instance, and that is where their rightful place should be. But they're also of use in the so-called free world, because the lawyers who challenge the banning of Palestinian action are in the same mode. They are absolutely essential to make sure governments in the UK and elsewhere do not overstep the mark. And African lawyers of African descent, are at the heart of that struggle. What should your literary and academic contribution be? Law must be thought leadership. And I remember going to a talk many years ago when I was a mere student with Kwame Ture in London, Stokely Carmichael. And he had a message for the young lawyers there, and he said, organize, organize, organize. And he said, really, you should put your words into writing. You should make them academically available, but make sure your people can read and understand what they see and hear. And therefore, that was, in a sense, what Mandela and many others have done, is make sure that what we say in court is easily understood. It's not hidebound in high phrases or words that you have to look up in the so-called Oxford Dictionary, or even look up in ours. Law, therefore, does not advance through practice alone. It advances through ideas. The globally competent lawyer contributes to legal development through writing, research, teaching, public scholarship. And never, never get too busy to share your thoughts or your guidance with the students. And please do not, as the Americans would say, once you reach that lofty place of having qualified, pull up the drawbridge behind you, pull up the ladder, and prevent the next person from getting to where you are. Judgments, articles, policy papers, and books shape how law is understood long after cases are decided. Africa must tell its own legal stories. They are not ever going to be told by the colonizer or the multinational who does not have your best interests at heart. Unilever will never tell the story of tea or its exploitation in Kericho and Bomet. That must be done by Kenyan lawyers and others in East Africa. We must produce jurisprudence, scholarship, and commentary that reflect African histories, economies, and constitutional struggles. Academic and literary work is not elitist, it is foundational. You will know very well that Derin Kamathi was a writer, he was a teacher, but he was also an academic who wrote the struggle, and he wrote about solidarity, who wrote about socialism, and he wrote about delivering justice for the people, which is why Mandela and many others revered his memory. It ensures that African legal thought is cited, taught, and respected globally, not as an afterthought, but as authority. Turning to human rights and the rule of law and democratic freedoms, no discussion of competence can be separated from values. You cannot ever sit in an ivory tower as a commercial lawyer and think that you can escape the burden or the responsibility of ensuring that governments are held to account, your citizens are free, and the rule of law and human rights are respected. If tear gas is sent on the streets of Kampala or anywhere else, it is something which will undermine the ability of the commercial lawyer to do business. Who will want to do business over dead bodies in a street? It is not a good investment look. And so if you are the United Arab Emirates and you're seeking to escape the responsibility of what you're doing in Sudan and simply say it's just watch the money, then lawyers who work in that environment have to ask themselves a moral question. What am I doing to change this dynamic? What am I doing to change this narrative? The rule of law is therefore not a procedural concept. It is a moral commitment to fairness, accountability, and restraint of power. Freedom of speech and freedom of associations are not inconveniences to government. They are its lifeblood. Without them, corruption thrives. Institutions weaken and legitimacy collapses. If you look for an example, look to the colonial governments and how they restricted freedom of speech, freedom of association before independence. It was their playbook. So if that was their playbook, why do governments now on the continent seek to use that same playbook to restrict freedom of speech and freedom of association? It is morally, politically wrong, and it will engender the downfall of those governments if they are not careful. The African lawyer, therefore, has a professional and ethical duty to uphold these principles, whether in constitutional litigation, commercial practice, public service, or civil society engagement. Global competence without that moral courage is hollow. Credentials without conscience are dangerous. Anti-corruption, therefore, must be a professional imperative. Corruption is not simply a political problem, it is a legal problem and a professional one. At the last tally, Kenya lost 33.33% of all its GDP to corruption, 1/3 since independence. Each successive government has had to wrestle to some extent, successfully or otherwise, with corruption. From the top to the bottom, it actually means that there are less schools being built, there are less roads being built, there is less transport infrastructure, and the health service in many parts of the continent is a fraction of what it should be. It is not because Europe is without corruption at all, quite the reverse. Europe has simply come to Africa to practice its corruption. And therefore, as a lawyer, you have a real responsibility if you cannot be party to that deal without becoming part of that problem. So, a globally competent African lawyer must be unambiguous in rejecting corruption in all its forms, public and private, grand and petty. This includes strengthening compliance frameworks, supporting whistleblower protections, and inconsistency on transparency in governance and procurement. And whilst we're at it, let's remember the financial crisis of 2008. How many lawyers were prosecuted from Lehman Brothers and others, those accountancy firms, out of New York and out of the financial banking sectors in the US? Did they not know what was going on? So don't just think that corruption is solely an African problem. It is not. It is just that, generally speaking, the Northern Hemisphere protects its lawyers far more effectively than we do here. But their responsibility is nonetheless. Africa cannot litigate its way out of corruption alone, but lawyers must lead by example, refusing to trade integrity for access or at advancement. What's the Pan-African vision for the legal profession in the future? Global competence must never dilute our Pan-African responsibility. Our legal future is interconnected. Trade, migration, climate change, digital economies, and security challenges do not respect borders. Criminals do not respect borders, so why should we? The traffickers of African migrants in the Mediterranean, as I saw firsthand in Catania with the Society of Black Lawyers, meant that trafficking gangs were made up of Nigerians, they were made up of Italians, Greeks, Britons, Tunisians, Egyptians. They couldn't care less. What they cared about was making money out of people suffering and out of our bodies dying in the Mediterranean, those that survived. Our legal responses must therefore be collaborative, coordinated, and confident. Pan-Africanism, however, is not nostalgia. It is strategy. It means harmonizing standard. We need that African passport that Gaddafi spoke so eloquently about. Recognizing qualifications, sharing judicial dialogue, and defending African interests in global forums, collectively rather than individually. It also means affirming African values, community, dignity, respect for elders, restorative justice, respect for women and children, and collective responsibility. These are not incompatible with global norms, they enrich them. So it cannot be easier for a Tanzanian lawyer to qualify in Tunisia than it is for a French lawyer to qualify in Tunisia. It cannot be easier for a British lawyer and advocate to get rights of audience in Uganda or South Africa than it is for somebody from the Côte d'Ivoire. We must have an Africa First strategy, and that must extend to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. We are making a start, but it is still, we have a long way to go. Passports, free trade, free movement, and respect of each other's professional qualifications is a must. In concluding, I would say that the African lawyer is a global architect. The future-ready African lawyer is not defined by where they studied. You do not get provenance by studying at Oxford or Yale or Harvard. You get it by studying at Makerere, at the universities on the continent that are well respected, often underfunded, but they have some of the best minds on our continent and on the planet. They are defined by how they think, how they act, and what they stand for. Global competence is not a destination, it is a discipline, a lifelong commitment to learning integrity, courage, and service. Unless we forget, by 2050, I believe, 2 in 5 of every young person on this planet will be of African descent. By 2100, 3 out of 5 people virtually on the planet will be of African origin. We have a huge market as lawyers for the future to make sure our voice is heard, but not only heard, but written down, recorded, and becomes, as it once was, the first on the planet. If African lawyers embrace advanced education with purpose, technology, with ethics, advocacy, with bravery, scholarship with authenticity, and Pan-Africanism with confidence, then we will not merely participate in the global legal order, we will help design it. In remembering some of my lower moments, which as an advocate, as a judge in the UK, I was forced to sue the UK government over 6 years. So I successfully sued the former Lord Chief Justice, Liz Truss, the appalling, very short-lived UK Prime Minister, a coterie of High Court judges, and forced them to a financial settlement a month before trial in the Employment Tribunal. That required not only some courage from myself, but huge support from my brothers and sisters, not only within the United Kingdom diaspora, but from Pan-African Lawyers Union, from others, from the National Bar Association. We are one, but we are obviously stronger together than we are alone. And I'll leave you one thought from Nelson Mandela when he said, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived, it is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we lead. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Judge Peter. That has been so captivating, extraordinary, and mind-blowing. And what stands out of this is the fact that global competence is not about certificates or credentials alone. It's about the value that an international degree brings whilst being applied by the holder, and how it shapes our judgments, informs our decisions, and amplifies our voices. Knowledge without purposeful action is inert, like Judge Peter has been asserting all through his presentation. The Honorable Judge has also reminded us that African lawyers are not just participants. Don't just be a passive participant of the global order. We are architects, guardians, and advocates, and our voices matter. The voices that uphold the rule of law, the voices that are custodians of justice, and the innovators that keep reshaping and disrupting legal systems for the continent. This insight transforms how we should view our careers today. The African lawyer of the future is not simply reactive, like Judge Peters said. We are deliberate architects, architects of our own careers, architects of our institutions, architects of influence. And this brings us now seamlessly to our panel discussion, where we are now moving away into the actual construction from principles of practice, to insights and strategy. And joining me this afternoon, friends, are two extraordinary ladies who I rather call thought leaders that embody these principles. Our first panelist is Miss Diana Claire Angwech. And Diana is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda, a commissioner for oaths and notary public with over 15 years of professional experience across private practice, civil society, and international institutions. She holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from Makerere University and a diploma in legal practice from the Law Development Center. Her expertise spans corporate and commercial law, governance, human rights, and organizational leadership. Diana is the former vice president of the Uganda Law Society and a member of both the Uganda Law Society and East Africa Law Society. Currently, she serves and holds many distinguished portfolios, among which include Chancellor of the Diocese of Kampala, Church of Uganda, board chairperson of Abide Family Center, board member of Tutapona International, board member of Mandela National Stadium. She's also the founder of the Alabaster Ladies Ministry, a mentorship platform that empowers women across generations. Now, Diana's career reflects strategic leadership, governance, stewardship, and intentional membership. Diana, previous generations have built their careers vertically, and this generation must now build them architecturally. The question that ponders my mind is, how can African lawyers design their careers differently in a borderless AI-enabled legal economy? Diana, you're welcome.
Thank you, Gabby. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that great introduction. I hope, first of all, that you can hear me. And we recently had a network shutdown in Uganda, so we've not been able to quite restore it the way we hope we would. It seems to be having a bit of glitches. So my hope is that through this presentation that you can hear me. Thank you, yes. Gabby. Thank you, ELS. Thank you, ELS, for this honorable invitation. I count it a privilege. It's been quite refreshing and a high task for me. Of course, I thank Judge Peter, who came right before me. I think that, Gabby, it was a very unfair setup. You can't have the judge speak and then put me right next. You should have had somebody else do the next question. Judge Peter, I commend you for your presentation. I think you make quite a case for Africa. If I did not have my African card, I'd be asking to renew my African card right now. It's a brilliant presentation. I think a few takeaways from there that Gabby hasn't mentioned yet is that AI, it's not AI that will replace lawyers, but those who know how to use AI. And I think I found it quite funny when you say that there's no that it's not that there's no corruption in Europe, it's that Europe comes to practice their corruption in Africa. I think that was very, very, very interesting to hear. I think Uganda and East Africa on a whole is a very interesting market. While we are a couple of countries that come together, we're quite different in terms of market, in terms of skill, and some of our markets are much smaller than others, which is notable to the members here. And so it's very interesting as we have this discussion across the border, because as we discuss the Ugandan concept, the Kenyan concept, and the maybe Dar es Salaam and Rwanda, the different countries involved, our understanding of the markets will be very key. Gabi, you set a very good question for us in terms of what do we do to future-proof the legal career? How do you be very relevant in the coming years? I think about that question and I'm very intrigued by it because 21 years ago when I was joining law school, my father had a conversation with one of the judges. One of the judges whom we happened to run into, who was a friend to him. The judge had followed me through my career, actually through my childhood, and enabled me study in particular schools. And so when we met up at some point in time, my father asked the judge to speak to me since I was going to be beginning law school. And so the judge began to speak to me, and his question to me then was, why do you want to do law? And so I made a case for human rights because that is the only kind of law I understood then. And so while I made the case for the first of law and the practice of human rights, because of the way the nation was going and the way different people were going, I thought that I had made such a brilliant presentation. The judge then proceeded to give me a scenario talking about what legal practice looked like then. This is about 21 years ago. And he said to me that a majority of what I was thinking about was going to wind up and pack their bags. He spoke about NGOs, and he said he gave a scenario that NGOs were now briefcase businesses, that as soon as funding was done, people would be able to pack up their NGOs and NGOs would be packing off. And so he continued having that conversation. It turned out that the pep talk was not quite a pep talk. It was a discouragement to practice and pursue law at the time. I tried to read my father's face as the discussion was ongoing, and he was a block. I could not exactly read him. And so when we got back home, I heard him mention to my mother how his idea to have a pep talk with the judge had not panned out the way that he had expected. In fact, it had turned out into the opposite way. And so he goes ahead to explain why he was very discouraged. I was very intrigued by it then, and as I went on through my career, I met very different people. I met lawyers. I met lecturers. Now a lecturer who has now turned into a politician. And many years after I had finished law school, I had a conversation with him, and he was asking then why I had done law and studied law. And he also proceeded to give me a very dim expression of what the legal field looked like. I found it rather interesting, and perhaps their sentiments many times where it felt like sentiments from older gentlemen who were discouraging women from coming into the profession. Now, at our time, I don't know the statistics now, out of every 5 people that attended law school, 3 of them were women, because of the 1.5 addition in the Constitution of Uganda that provides for girls or women to join higher institutions to try and have more women at the higher level of education. And so we were 3 to 2 about people who entered law school. But in terms of practice, as you came out of law school, I understood that the space had become shrinking. And the latter years have shown that with the increase of law schools, it has become a bit more difficult even to practice in Uganda. Why? Because our market is small and our market is very interesting. Now, I found that the judges' sentiments at the beginning were both personal as well as very interesting, grim perspective of what the future was going to look like. It's true that each of us has seen what the NGO space has looked like in the last couple of 10 years. We've had challenges with funding. We've had challenges with USAID projects closing. We've had challenges with government funding, even in these projects. And that has not helped that sector, but that does not mean that that the sector itself has died. And people are finding creative solutions and creative ways to keep going. And as I've gone through the practice of law, I've found that it's a bit more difficult to practice and be relevant in this society and be relevant as a lawyer, because the number of law schools that have increased in the country are quite many. And so with the bars, with the increase also of Law Development Center, where we get to do the bar course, there's been such an influx of lawyers into the market. And so the question for us becomes, how do you remain relevant in an ever-changing society? How do you remain relevant with all the challenges we have to face, with a shrinking civic space, with shrinking funding gap, with even government policies changing across, government policies changing in Uganda, changing out of the nation? And we cannot run away from the fact that a lot of our funding, especially in the NGO sector, comes from the Western world. And so I feel that there's a lot of dependency that we cannot run away from. So the question then becomes for us, how do we then change that dynamic to ensure that we are relevant? And so when I turn to your question, Gabby, I thought of a few ways I could suggest to us as lawyers and as legal practitioners. How do you remain relevant for the next 10 years? One of the things I've found that have worked is the idea that we need to have creative networks across borders. While we have had the discussion of cross-border practice for quite a number of years, it has not necessarily materialized in the way that we expected. For 10 years or so, we've been having this discussion. And while some of our countries have decided that they will not participate in it, I think other countries have been more lenient here and there. Some jurisdictions provide within our countries, but specifically, I think Kenya and Uganda, that if you can get a special pass from the Law Council, then you are able to carry on and have a case and practice here and there. So what happens to the majority of people who are not able to find their way in and have a special pass or practice because you're not qualified to practice in that particular jurisdiction? And so the way forward for us as a legal fraternity is to have networks across the different jurisdictions. And this can happen in two ways. One, you can form a new firms and have locals working those firms in those particular jurisdictions. Or alternatively, you can form a referral system amongst yourselves. Recently, I had a French company that wanted to think of opening up business in Uganda, in East Africa, and they were trying to find a jurisdiction that would be suitable for them, both in the legal market as well as government watch over that particular sector. And so a group of practitioners from Kenya reached out to try and find practitioners within Uganda, Rwanda, and different other jurisdictions. And we formed a coalition and a group of people where we could actually talk and present that. What this helped us do is get referrals from the different jurisdictions. And therefore, if I ever need a referral from Rwanda, I know who I can tag. If I ever need a referral from Kenya, I know who can tag. Because working together opened our minds to the fact that we can practice from the other jurisdiction using the leverage and networks that we can have. And so for a lawyer that wants to survive in the next 10 years, you must think beyond borders. You cannot think about a market such as Uganda is quite small. And so with the influx of people that are coming into the market, for you to remain relevant, you have to broaden the space and push that door open, as opposed to remaining necessarily locked in your jurisdiction. The other is that you need to diversify your knowledge. The world is changing, and it's changing very fast. The generations are changing, and the newest force in the marketplace is Gen Zs, who work and think very differently from millennials, us who consider ourselves millennials, and the older generations that have gone before us. And so being skilled in one discipline does not necessarily cut it. As a lawyer, one of the things that you're going to need is what we call project management skills. Many of us went to law school, and we decided that if you can master transactional law, land law, real estate law, and every other discipline that we are taught, banking, transactional, all these disciplines that we are taught in law school, we thought that would be enough to make you to make you a lawyer, to make you a competent lawyer. But with the ever-changing market, we have to change the way we are practicing. And that means mastering many skills that are not necessarily not necessarily trained in the legal space or legal school. I found a lawyer recently, as I was doing business development for a law firm. I found a lawyer who was managing the payroll. He was managing resettlement of people in the displaced camps because he was handling an oil project. And the investors that had come into Hoima or come into the country needed a lawyer who could both handle the payroll, the resettlement of people, the contracts, the movement of materials. And so that required an aspect of project management. And sometimes a big chunk of the work we do many times when investors come into the nation is not necessarily legal. And we partner with people who would be good at this particular trades. But a lawyer who wants to future proof or wants to be relevant has got to master other skills. So project management is something that we cannot do without. Understanding how business manages, business development. Many firms have recently taken on business development. I served as a business development manager for one of the top law firms in Uganda. And I found that when lawyers begin to think of law as a business, they succeed, as opposed to thinking of law as just a tool that you can use in the courtroom and out of the courtroom. You have to find the business aspect of law that differentiates you from everybody else. And so understanding the aspect of business development is important. So diversification of your skills is important, because even when you are retired from active service or retired from the bench, you have an extra skill to go a long way to keep you relevant. Many of our judges who retire from the bench these days practice mediation or alternative dispute resolution because they acquired those skills. But beyond that particular space, you need something that will keep you relevant. Having an extra skill, especially in the practice of law, is critical for you if you want to remain relevant in the next 10 years. The other, of course, is what the judge mentioned, is the adapting the changing technologies. Once we were asked, I remember as a firm, when we were doing a bid, we were asked what extra thing we bring to the table between two firms that would give our firm the edge over the other. And then we found that one firm was offering to have due diligence, offering to have a due diligence that was done by a robot, as opposed to ours, which was about going through a user checklist and interacting with different institutions to give them the due diligence checklist that they needed. Of course, you can tell from that which firm was picked over the other. And so the world is fast changing, and it's a fast-paced world. We cannot stop it, but we have to adapt with what's coming on. Understanding AI is something that is important for every single person. I recently had a problem where I needed a flyer out and we were behind time in having that flyer out. One of the people who I work closely with offered to use AI to create the flyer. Now, the reason we were delayed with the flyer is because our particular designer who used this particular software and a specific design was not available. And so it came down to either you change what the brand looks like, or you forfeit having that flyer out within the particular time. And so when one of my members offered to use AI to come up with something that was similar, I thought it was a joke until she passed it through AI, fed it what it needed, and a flyer was out within no time. She said to me, because she lives in the US, she said to me at that time that where US is and where many of us are going to is that unless you understand AI and how to use it, you are not employable right now in the US. Now, we can think of that as the US and think that our East African jurisdiction is very different. But the world is fast changing, and you have to be flexible as time comes, as the years go by. Being flexible comes with the idea that you can learn different tools or work with different AI materials that are happening. It's no longer a detriment for us right now to take on technology. Many of us lawyers, when we work in such a way where we give majority of the work to the clerks and require them to learn the different proficiencies while we handle the technical parts. But we as lawyers, if we don't understand or have the ability to learn these different AI tools or different technologies and that are coming into the market, we are going to become irrelevant in many ways. Gone are the days are in terms of legal practice where you're required to appear for a meeting physically. Things have changed, and with the different technologies that have developed, you know that we can have a meeting online. For example, we're having a webinar that's across jurisdictions right now, and regardless of which country you are at right now, you're logged in from there and are benefiting at real time because of the technology that you were able to invest in. It is possible for us as lawyers to leverage on these advancing technologies to enable us become effective and smarter in the way that we do work. It will shorten the time that we are able to perform. And so while we can think of the detriment that these technologies are bringing, I think the biggest value that they bring to us as the legal field is that we're able to be smarter and faster in the way that we present work. I think we looked at cases where lawyers in a certain jurisdiction were now using AI to do their research, and I'd put up cases in the courtroom that were formed by AI. And that's where we need to be careful, even as we onboard these different technologies, that it does not take away the human aspect. We too need to do our research so that a computer is not telling us and coming up with different things. It's becoming very difficult to differentiate between what is real and what is not real, especially if you're looking at social media. But how can we leverage that? Use the best of the machine to bring out the kind of quality that we're looking for. I think one of the things that we need to do to become very relevant in the next 10 years, or to stay relevant in the next 10 years, is to prioritize what we call soft skills, emotional intelligence. We are all acquiring if we all acquire the same skills, the same qualification, what will put you ahead of the pack? What will put you ahead of everybody else? Majority of institutions at this point in time are building what we call soft skills into their KPIs, into their into the way that we manage or we keep track of the way our employees are performing. And so we are able to build that soft skill because it's a critical part for any company. It's a critical part for any firm. It's a critical part for any NGO. It helps you develop real compassion, understand people, and to learn to be a team player. The truth is that nobody cares if you're the smartest person in the room. If you lack emotional intelligence, people skills, nobody wants to be around you and nobody wants to work with you. And so that translates into how you interact with different people. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you do not if you do not manage your soft skills or understand that, you become irrelevant to many people. And so when you're making a pitch to a company, when you're making a pitch to different entities, it's important that you showcase your personality, showcase what exemplifies you as trustworthy, because that will set you ahead of the pack. If we do want to remain relevant, we have to prioritize growing in this particular area. The human touch of the law is something that you can never do away with. I said this in my earlier years of practice because I found this to be true, that if a lawyer never interacts with human rights, then they should not be able to, they will never be good lawyers, because a good lawyer understands the human face of practice. And so we know that as we continue to learn from the soft skills and growing the soft skills, we develop into the kind of practitioner that everybody desires to interact with. Your reputation will always precede you. Let that reputation be the kind that opens doors for you, as opposed to the one that closes doors for you. How should lawyers plan for international exposure? At what point should lawyers plan for international exposure? I think that right from the tutelage, you need to plan for international exposure. The first thing for you is to obtain the qualifications. Now, I did hear the judge talk about qualifications and not being able to get, it doesn't matter where you get them from. It's important that you understand that these qualifications are what open the door for you. We recently had a scenario in Uganda where the CEO of a well-known company was fired or was asked to leave, but they did not have the specific qualification that was needed to be in that place, was needed to hold that position in the first place. And so it becomes a technicality. And so if you are planning for international exposure, international regulation, it's important that you're also expanding your mind and expanding where you're getting your information from. And so having an international degree is actually important, and a university that's affiliated with it. We had a bank executive recently who was promoted to the Bank of Uganda in one of the high positions. And he said this to me about his promotion. He got his degree from one of the universities in Uganda that's not quite a popular university. And he got his undergraduate degree from that particular entity. And so he went on to get postgraduate degrees and diplomas from international accredited institutions. And that became a game changer in the positions that he has held. It's true that it's not the degree that will necessarily earn you the space, but it gives you a certain sense of exposure to markets and different ideas that many people won't have. If you put two people together, one who has had their degree, their undergraduate and their postgraduate in the same place, they're not going to have the same exposure as somebody who has traveled to a different jurisdiction and can now come back to your local jurisdiction and apply the knowledge that they have received from that exposure. And so the moment you have the opportunity to expand your knowledge through this avenue, you take it. And so it sets and gives you a space, or it gives you a platform. It gives you a platform for you to be able to have an international recognition. And as you also start off in your career, I would advise you to associate with big players in the market. I say this to many young lawyers as they come into practice: as much as possible, work for a mid-tier firm, or if you have the chance, work for a big-tier firm, because the smaller you are, the less you will be known. You will become more forgettable if you confine yourself in the beginning. Under the big players, you can find a mentor who will leverage their networks to get you a seat in the room. The fastest way to grow your platform is to allow the mentor make an introduction of you into a place. The more they like you, the more the mentor likes you, the more they will champion your cause. And so for you at a beginning and an early stage, if you desire international exposure, it is important that you are associating with mentors and people in those places. How do mentorship and professional networks accelerate global competence? This is a very interesting question that was posed to us, because I particularly am passionate about mentorship. And I say this often, that if one generation would be able to mentor another generation, you would have a much better product. You know, when Apple always comes up with a product, they call it Pro Max. And so you'd have a Pro Max generation compared to your version that comes before it. And so mentorship, it helps you know the terrain, and it always opens up the person's networks to you. When you work with people whose networks are wide, people's networks that are wide, you're able to access those networks and leverage on them to help you expand your own networks. A good mentor will always get you into the room. They will give you access to their own personal networks. Now, what you do with that access determines if you will stay in that space. You need to watch the verbal and non-verbal cues that your mentor does as they interact with the global players. And as you watch them, learn from both their verbal and non-verbal cues. Because when they open their networks to you, you need to be able to also have to maintain that seat at the table. I had a mentor when I was growing up in the profession, or when I was coming up in the profession. I had a mentor who gave me who opened his networks to me. And one of the first things that he did is that he realized that my reading was only confined to fictional books, storybooks and fictional books. And so he started to give me presents that were self-help books, leadership groups, improving in work books, autobiographies of people, great men and women who had gone ahead of me. And from that, I learned that there was much more to understand. My mind was exposed and opened up, and I was able to tap into places that I never would have tapped into, because they opened up my mind, not just with the places that they introduced me to, but with changing my mindset through the books that I read. And so he enabled me to coordinate programs with international guests at the time, and allowed me to be in the room to wait on the guests. I thought at the time that I was simply waiting and studying with the guests, but what he was doing was giving me an opportunity to make my introduction with these guests. After all, the guests already knew him. They were international players from all parts of the region. So people from Ghana, from Nigeria, and those different lawyers that were well known in those jurisdictions. And as I served and waited on them, I was able to get their contacts. And recently, when somebody needed a contact in Ghana and they reached out to me, I knew who to give. I knew who to refer them to. Why? Because mentorship had opened the door and allowed me to leverage on their networks. I think also mentorship. You need to work under, and when you're undergoing mentorship, be careful who you choose as a mentor, because the person you choose also needs to be open enough to open their networks to you, but also needs to be an acclaimed professional who can introduce you to the global space, the global rankings. If you work for top tier firms and you work for top tier organizations, the thing that they are big on is getting rankings for the institution and for the partners that work with them. So in order for you to master the trade, you must be able to work under them with the particular things that they're submitting. So for example, if you want to be placed under IFLR or Chambers or WTR, the trademarks or any oil and gas rankings, it's important that you're working with people who have been ranked before, because in doing the work with them, when they're making the submissions, your name automatically comes into that. And so if you can work under these people and tap into the knowledge and the work that they are doing, you will be able to also have a foot into rankings. Now, these rankings may not seem important for you, but they're very important in terms of accelerating you and your competence on the global space. Because when different investors come into the region, they many times will look into the people that are ranked in that region and will give them the first pitch before. Now, when we are thinking of awards, we should not just think of the legal awards specifically. You also need awards that come from the humanitarian work that you are doing, awards from your communities, from the projects that you're doing with the prisons. Show that you care about the welfare of people, and this will always earn you a step ahead of other people. I think in that particular segment, lastly, professional networks you have to grow your professional networks within the industry. Tapping into professional networks is very important. We make light of the professional affiliations that we have, or professional networks that we have, but it's important that we tap into them and remain in them. I think of BNI. BNI is very common among the world, and I thought of BNI specifically because I found that this year they have 355,000 people within their networks. And so if you joined a network like that, you have access to that. You have access to those number of business professionals. They operate in 76 countries across the world. They have 11,600 local chapters. And last year alone, they made 26.5 billion in revenue. If, as a lawyer, you are not tapping into that professional network, you are doing yourself a disservice. And the reason I chose BNI is because I did a campaign. Gabby will know this. I did a campaign a few years ago, and one of the people who stood against me was a president of BNI in this country, and then they used that as a network to tap into voters, and that for them or turned out well in their perspective. It promoted them. They may not have gotten the seat, but it promoted them on so many platforms. And so professional networks, people are able to recognize you. They're able to make referrals to you. And so never neglect professional networks, because they offer thought leadership through the writings that you make in these particular areas, through the service that you make, through the organization of events that you have when they come together. Certain associations within the judiciary, for example, in Uganda, have afforded people certain opportunities they would not have had. I saw a graduation coming from Pepperdine University for the people who work for an association within the judiciary, because people were able to just tap into that network. And so never neglect professional networks. Never neglect professional networks. Can I be heard? Gabi, I'm being told I can't be heard. Can I be heard?
I can hear you from my end. I think the participant needs to check the internet.
All right. Thank you.
Can hear you too.
All right, thank you. And so you never neglect professional networks, because they come in handy. They open you up to different spaces. So what common mistakes undermine our long-term professional positioning? The common mistakes that we make and from the very beginning, and it's important that we curb these mistakes so that we are able to become successful in our professional career. The first one is ignoring mentorship. If we ignore mentorship, we are ignoring an opportunity to learn faster. I always talk about the five kinds of mentors: the master of the craft, the champion of your cause, the co-pilots, the reverse mentor, or the anchor. Now, in your professional career, there are three particular kinds of mentors you should never avoid. The master of your craft is somebody that has gone before you. Always find somebody that you can look up to, you admire in your profession, and allow them walk you through their career. It's not a one-off. It can be as long-term as the person is willing to walk with you. A champion of your cause can also be the master of your craft, the person who is always talking you up in places. I particularly met somebody recently who, every time we're in a public space, she will make an opportunity to make an introduction of me and speak about the great things that I'm doing. What she's doing is championing my cause and allowing me to meet the people that come to greet her. They will pay attention to you because you are with her, or your peers, your co-pilots who are with you. So ignoring mentorship will cause you to go through pitfalls that you would have ordinarily prevented. You close yourself from networking with big players or people that you need to know. But if you embrace mentorship at a young stage, you're able to understand your purpose and streamline your vision. And so ignoring mentorship is one of the things that I would say is a mistake that many people make in their profession. You may be the most brilliant person that comes out of law school, but you need people who have gone ahead of you to show you. And you also need your peers to keep you grounded and to help you understand your blind spots, because nobody else does it like your peers. The second common mistake is when you stop pursuing your developmental goals, or when you're pursuing your goals, it becomes about a title and not about positioning. If you chase a title is all you're ever going to get, because everybody who is willing to assert themselves can become a doctor in the profession they're in. But if you want to future-proof your career through skill development, you are setting yourself apart. So what will be the next thing what you need to look at is what is developing in that particular area. What is developing recently in Uganda, when oil was opening up, or the discussion of the oil market was opening up, many people went back to study oil and gas. Whether or not they're going to apply that particular master's or degree is another thing. You need to be able to read the market and see what is changing in that particular profession, what is coming up. Project management, as I've said, for a lawyer should be non-negotiable. Business development for a lawyer should be something that you tap into. Aspects such as business management, and even in your jurisdiction, if oil and gas is something that you can tap into, those are areas that you can look into. But there are other things that are changing and advanced technologies that are coming up. How do you continue to skill yourselves in that area? If you stop learning, you become useless to the market. The other mistake that people commonly make is mere application of book knowledge without understanding the heart of the principle. I don't know how many of you have read the book, Why Good Girls Still Don't Get the Corner Office. And it's a good book with many rules, with many power moves that many people that enable women be able to become powerful in their career. And so I have noticed that some people, I was telling somebody recently, I noticed somebody who read the book and decided to apply principle for principle without understanding the power moves. And so when you don't understand those power moves, you can apply a principle without the heart of the principle. If the heart is not connected to the principle, you are not different from a machine that is simply following rules. Everybody can spot a fake, and over time they will spot a fake as you continue to apply, excuse me, as you continue to apply, excuse me, sorry, as you continue to apply these rules. And so it's important that as you read the books, because they're important for you in your knowledge, but you must apply your heart to those different rules. Don't merely apply a principle, because once people spot that fake, you will become irrelevant. As you read the books, understand the heart behind the principle and use every creative method to apply it. So I was, some people, I was talking about this in a particular genre or a particular place where someone was applying moves in a place that was irrelevant for them to apply their moves. But because they have read the book, they thought it was important for them to do. It's a common mistake that people make, and it's something that needs to be worked on. I think lastly is when we do not leverage beneficial networks, and we must understand that learning is quid pro quo. When we get into our networks or make networks and connections, it's important that we understand why these networks have come into our lives. Never ignore the importance and placement of networks and people in your lives, because people give you a seat at the table. The more allies you bring to the table yourself, the more you have people on your side. Every time you're given a seat at the table, use that opportunity to bring others alongside with you, because when you bring others alongside with you on the table, you are more likely to win many things in your favor. You're more likely to win things that you were looking for, an argument, and people who you have brought onto the table will be your sounding board or your basis or your foundation for you to keep going higher. So it's important that you're able to use the networks that you have to bring others. The first thing that you do when you establish these particular relationships is to open and make room for others to come. Throw open the door wide so that you make room for others to come. Many people who you bring alongside with you will be loyal to you to the very end, because people remember what you have done for them and how you have given them an opportunity at greatness, as opposed to closing the door. As you are rising, never rise alone. Rise with many people. You'll be more secure and you will rise farther. I thank you for your kind attention. Back to you, Gabby.
Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Wow, Diana, that was quite fitting. It was not just a presentation, Diana. What you've given us today is what I will term as a blueprint. A blueprint, because what you've done is a shift in this conversation from abstract ambition to the architectural design. You began with a, rather deceptively simple question on how do we remain relevant, and what followed was, more than a rhetoric. It was a structural strategy. You reminded us that relevance is engineered through networks across jurisdictions, referral ecosystems, farms that think beyond borders, and knowledge that refuses to remain static. The idea that being skilled in one discipline no longer suffices. And that's, one of the most sobering truths that you've given me in particular this afternoon. And I know the hundreds of participants in this webinar. You made mention that the future ready lawyer is not singularly skilled. They are strategically diversified. And yeah, you encouraged us to explore fields that, you felt we need, fields like project management, business development, mediation, running law as a business. And yeah, you encourage that when we begin to see law, not merely as a profession, but as an enterprise, positioning changes and sustainability changes. As you know, many of us grapple with sustainability. And yeah, and your point about mastering additional competencies was quite, powerful. You mentioned that, many judges at retirement will, go into mediation. Senior lawyers may go into consultancies, but those who future-proof their careers do not retire from relevance. They evolved, to new platforms of influence, and you proceeded, to move us into something that is more critical, which is adaptability. The world is moving at a very fast pace. The legal market is even faster. Technology is no longer optional, it's an infrastructure. And what I found especially compelling, Diana, was your balance, that AI does not remove the human element, it amplifies it when used intelligently. And the fact that we must leverage but never use the human face of law. And you said it clearly that reputation always precedes you, emotional intelligence sustains you, and of course, a human touch will define you. And then you turned to international exposure, where you were refreshingly honest and told us these qualifications will open doors. International degrees create platforms, exposure expands perspective, and the fact that access is not power in itself. And you told us that what determines what we do with access determines what happens in that space. And mentorship, when wisely chosen, is not symbolic, it's catalytic. Yeah, that was really quite powerful, Diana, and we really thank you for that very wonderful architectural foundation. And it's really been incredible. And it's no wonder quite timely that now we move into, another aspect of this discussion. And, you know, this aspect is on strategic education and global positioning. We've heard from the judge, we've heard from Diana, and what comes out is, strategic education and global positioning. And taking us through that is Miss Winnie Rachel, MSc, Master of Science, who is a distinguished communication strategist and organizational psychologist with over 13 years of leadership across corporate and non-profit sectors. She holds a bachelor's degree in communications and public relations and a master of science in organizational psychology, blending technical communication expertise with behavioral insight. She's a founder of the Bro Foundation, advancing education, healthcare, WASH initiatives, and economic empowerment through community-driven engagement. Now, as country manager for UNICAF, she has significantly expanded access to digital higher education across Africa, strengthening enrollment growth, institutional partnerships, and brand visibility. Her work sits at the intersection of strategic communication, institutional trust, crisis management, and transformation. Winnie, advanced degrees are often pursued aspirationally. Let me refine the question. When does an advanced degree or an LLM shift from optional to structurally necessary in a competitive global market?
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Such an honor to be here this afternoon. I'm so elated to hear from Honorable Judge Peter and Diana. That was awesome. That was awesome. I am a product of mentorship, and most of the time when I give my speeches, and a lot of the youths are asking, "How did you get into this space at an early age?" I couldn't agree more on what has been presented today. And I'm going to take a few minutes just to elaborate on the question that Gabriel has mentioned, and also the partnership that we have rolled with ELS and how we come in this particular sector to make it easier for lawyers. Now, as I answer the question that Gabriel has just posed, I have been thinking about this particular webinar and thinking about what does it mean to be an African lawyer? What does it take? What in a world where we have borders, and these borders no longer define opportunity but competence. And I look at this particular decade where we are lawyers were trained to be master status, to argue in precedent. And also when you look at this career, they're expected to defend justice within national boundaries. But today, the courtroom is no longer just physical. The first time I saw that it is legal to serve somebody on WhatsApp, I was, taken aback. And today, it's not just being there for the physical, part of giving out, your responsibility as a lawyer. The law has become digital. It has gone global. It is the power of, embraced the power of artificial intelligence. And the question is no longer, are you qualified? The question is, are you globally competent? And putting up together what, the judge has mentioned and Diana has put in place. Global competence means understanding international legal systems. And when we talk about it today, it means delivering all the AI tools ethically and intelligently. But then again, as a lawyer, how do you find yourself then in this space to be able to hold credentials that are recognized beyond your passport? Because I look at it and I think it means you need to be prepared not just for today's law, but for the disruptions that we're having currently in the current world. And so allow me to just share my presentation. It's not going to take much of your time because I want to demonstrate to you how UNICAF, how we come in as the education partner for ELS, so that you do not just have a certificate, but have a strategic advantage like the other panelists have mentioned. Because talent is evenly distributed across Africa, but opportunity is not. And that is why our scholarships bring us to an important discussion today. Then how does UNICAF and ELS partner to help you achieve this vision? And so through the collaboration with ELS, we have intentionally positioned African lawyer for global relevance. So let me just share my presentation in a minute. Then I think we can have this conversation going. Please confirm you can actually see my slide 1.
Yes.
Yes, Winnie, we
Good.
do see that.
Good. So great. So as I begin this particular presentation, that is not gonna take so long. The question most of you would be asking would emanate from the 2 videos that I'm going to play right now.
Do you need an internationally recognized degree to improve your job opportunities at a higher salary? Then UNICAF is the answer. We can help you realize your dream by offering you a scholarship towards achieving your goal. UNICAF University, a Pan-African independent recognized university combining the best elements of international education, offers high-quality degree programs at a fraction of the cost. With branch campuses and all learning centers in 12 different countries in Africa, we offer a full range of bachelor, master's and doctorate degrees. You can study fully online using the UNICAF state-of-the-art platform or on campus at one of our esteemed campuses. In addition to a UNICAF university degree, you can study towards a degree awarded by one of our partner universities in the UK. Through the UNICAF Scholarship Programme, you can earn a British Master's degree with international recognition at a fraction of the cost. UNICAF, increasing access to quality higher education. More than $90 million worth of scholarships already awarded to eligible applicants. Sign up now to make the most of our affordable degree offers. Visit www.unicaf.org and complete the simple application form to apply for one of our scholarships.
Now, what if I told you that as a legal practitioner, you can be able to access a scholarship and study at the comfort of your station? Amidst the busy schedule that we have as professionals, some of us taking care of families, some of us have jobs that are very demanding. Some of us traveling all over the world trying to, meet the obligations that we have. UNICAF and ELS came into an agreement whereby we are able to renegotiate for scholarships with international universities in the UK. And so this particular session brings you the perspective of how then do you move from the aspect that was discussed earlier of being competent in this world. So in a brief, UNICAF is an international organization. We are based in Larnaca, Cyprus, in Europe. And it's one of the leading online platforms that facilitates online delivery of very affordable, very flexible, and high quality university education to eligible applicants. But when you talk about eligible applicants, in this case, you're talking about, are you a member of ELS? Are you up to date? Then we can be able to pre-negotiate these particular scholarships that would help you pursue your dream, careers. So for the last 30 years, we have had the experience in the international education market. And currently we pride ourselves by the fact that we have offered over 120 million worth of scholarships. That's a huge number to talk about. And we have transformed over 90,000 lives. I look into this space that we have today. We have panelists from, Uganda, from Europe, and we have made the world a global village. Today, UNICAF has students in over 258 countries in the world, and that makes it very possible for each and every person to pursue their dream degree. What is the catch? How do we get this particular amount of, scholarships that we talk about? We have partnered and we are backed up with investors in Europe, the UK, and USA for the longest time. We have had Goldman Sachs supporting this particular course, and we have edX on board. We have CDC Investment Works, which currently is a British investment funds, and we also have University Ventures. Apart from that, to amplify the work that we do, we work internationally with recognized media houses like Forbes, the New York Times, Africa Capital Digest, with Google, the Pioneers, Vanguard, MBAstudies.com, IT Africa, and others that I may not mention in this particular session. And so most of the time, people wonder, how comes we are able to offer this number of scholarships? Now, when we partnered with ELS, we were able to onboard 5 universities. And I'm going to begin with the 2 universities that we have in Africa. Currently, we have UNICAF University in Malawi and Zambia. These universities are accredited by the British Accreditation Council, that is the BSc. And also you may be aware that this is a very, the higher education institution that, accredits universities. UNICAF is able to provide online access to professional development short courses that are offered by UNICAF University. When you go to the international partnerships that we have been able to facilitate British master's degrees from the UK, and we partner with the University of Suffolk, Liverpool John Moore University, and University of East London. This makes 5 universities that you can be able to access from every part of this world, irrespective of where you are. And now, as we began this particular partnership, we wanted to give, the ELS membership, the upcoming lawyers, the veterans that have been on board, a glimpse of what it is to be a student of one of these universities. What does it take if you want to do an LLM today, if you want to do, a course that is going to transform you in project management and all that. This is one of the universities that we brought on board. So I just want to share with you what we have done together and how we have been able to change this particular narrative. But as we play that particular video, allow me then also to just talk about University of Suffolk in a minute. The University of Suffolk is a very transformational university. if you look at it online to this particular webinar, you'll find out that it has a very good audience, and a modern world of employment produces very good, well-established students. It is very distinctive. And for the last years that we have partnered with them, the university's purpose is to change the lives of individuals and communities for better. And so UNICAF has been, selected as the #1 deliverer of, the university's program online via a state-of-art e-learning environment. And this learning environment is what we call the virtual learning environment, where you are able to access your class from whichever part of the universe you are. And so the University of Suffolk is responsible for the academic quality of the programs and the award of degrees. What does this mean? Once you have received a scholarship, you are eligible to choose the university, in this case, University of Suffolk. And after that, you study in University of Suffolk. If it is a master's, if it is an LLM, you do it within 2 years to 5 years. And after that, you are awarded the degree. You can be able to, physically attend the graduation at the university. So allow me to play you a video on what it looks like to be a student of University of Suffolk. A life-changing opportunity indeed. Our second university that I'll touch at the last is University of East London, which is the newest entry in the partnership that we've had. For the last years that we've partnered with EUL, it has been very instrumental through the provision of quality academic programs and research. This is one of the universities with the best LLMs, and UNICAF has been selected to be the exclusive global partner of the university to deliver its programs online. And we do this again through the state-of-art digital platform that we own. And the partnership started with 2 University of East London degrees, which were law masters, law in masters. And you can see from this particular video that, most of the students who have undertaken their LLM with these particular universities and gone to the UK to graduate have given great testimonials. Allow me to just switch that off. Have given great testimonials on how this program has been able to help. Somebody's raising their hand, Jane. I don't know if you want to take that, Gabriel, or I continue. She will be able to speak later.
Winnie, you can proceed, colleagues.
Okay.
We'll have a session for question and answer. So if you have a question or answer, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A segment, or we'll call upon you to raise your hand and we'll take those questions immediately after the presentations. Thank you.
Awesome. So kindly just use the Q&A session. Apparently, we have 2 panelists from UNICAF, Sheila and Viona. They will also be answering questions as we proceed this, so that we don't take much time with the presentation, so that I wind up within the next few minutes, and then we can be able to take in the questions. Now, here's a glimpse of what it is to be a student of University of East London. be the next? Imagine partnership that has been signed between ELS and UNICAF to offer you with an 80% scholarship for your studies with any of the universities that we have just mentioned. I only played videos for 2 universities, and because of time, I may not be able to play the rest. But this is to inform you that we have 5 partners, 3 in the UK, 2 in Africa, that you are able to choose where you want to do your LLM or any other course. I'm going to show you the other courses that we have in a few. But this particular partnership has seen members of ELS. Last year, we had more than 10 people from ELS who got the scholarships and are currently, winding their degrees and almost graduating. And this year, we look at the opportunity to serving you even better. This is one of the opportunities that you can take advantage of to have an 80% scholarship that has been renegotiated. You do not have to go through a scholarship committee because the MOU between ELS and UNICAF has already been pre-negotiated with the scholarship committee. And today's webinar brings to you this opportunity for you to be able to apply. How do you do that? You will be able to leave us with your contacts. That is your name, your phone number, and email address. You can put it on the chat, but also I believe, Gabriel, after this particular webinar, we will be able to share that with you so that you can be able to share it on the email, the link, so that they can be able to make their applications. Please do not go to the UNICAF website to apply because that's a general platform of application and the 80% does not apply. We have a partnership that we have signed with the ELS fraternity that would give you the 80%. There is a special link and code for this particular application. So be patient enough to have that link that will be shared from the ELS team. We do not just offer LLM. We have several other courses that you can specialize in. I like the way, when Diana was talking about the different, courses that people are taking, and you have specialization even, you have specialization even as a lawyer to be able to, concentrate on a certain field. And so we have an MSc in business management, international relation, data science, big data technologies. We have, oil and gas. We have other courses like business psychology. We have education. We have MA in law, international relations, and masters in arts and criminology and social policy. As you can see from these ones that are listed in the UK university, public health and all that. So we have a variety. We have project management that you can be able to choose from, not just limited to the LLM degree that probably most of us would want to concentrate on. And when you look at the other university, UNICAF University, we have variations from bachelor's. We have master's degrees, as you can see listed here, and this can be provided. You can go to our website and check this under the different universities. But as I said, the application, you will wait for the special link to be sent to you by ELS. If you have done your master's and you would like to pursue a doctoral degree, yes, we have a doctorate in business administration. And then under the doctorate of philosophy, we have a lot of specializations under that. So you might want to check what other specialization you can be able to take advantage of. And then finally, we have a doctorate in education, if that would be something of your interest. Now, we are cognizant of the fact that the world has gone digital and online learning has become a thing. UNICAF providing a platform where you can be able to access your notes online through audio visuals, through, downloading notes, and also by the virtue of doing summative, assignments that you can be able to provide. But we also recognize that there is the need of our students being able to meet together, discuss on the contemporary issues affecting their fields, like the law field, from different countries. Like I mentioned, we have students from 258 countries. And this is a rich background where networking, which is one of the key things that was discussed today, takes place. And so every year we organize the students' annual conferences in different spaces of this world. And for the last years, we've had one in London. We have had 3 in Dubai and 1 in Cape Town. And this year, on the 26th and 27th, again, our students will be meeting for that particular networking conference where they can be able to meet with their tutors, their fellow students, and all that. So allow me to just play a video on what has happened in the past when our students gather together just to mingle and get to know each other, being that they are online students. right there, you can see UNICAF students with working hard and playing. So again, we have the local events that we organize as country level. UNICAF has 12 is present in 12 African countries, Kenya being one of them. And our students also within the countries, we have cohorts where we are able to fully fund their events, where they also come again and meet and also have discussions around what they're doing in class vis-a-vis what they're practicing. And some of the events that we have had in the past, just for fun, here.
All you need is one dream. All you need is one goal. All you need is one click. UNICAF can make your every dream come true. Yeah. No dream's too big. No dream not too small. Take the first step to success. Oh yeah. 'Cause UNICAF is here. UNICAF is here.
Indeed, a life-changing opportunity. Our time is much spent. But before I leave the floor, so that you can be able to ask questions, how we would be able to access an LLM and how easy that would be with this partnership we have with ELS. You might be wondering, how does the UNICAF online learning platform works? And so I'm going to share with you a short video of a guided tour of the virtual learning environment, how it operates and how as a student, you'll be able to access it and do, your studies online without any problems. So here is the UNICAF virtual learning environment and what it entails.
This video will take you on a short tour of the virtual learning environment used by UNICAF's partners, highlighting the key things you need to know to navigate through one of their courses. Don't forget, once the course is started, you can study anytime and any way that suits you because it is all done online. Each UNICAF partner has its own virtual learning environment. When you are signed into a UNICAF partner's virtual learning environment, you will be taken to a page that lists the current news and announcements for the courses in which you are enrolled. The navigation of the site is very easy. Simply expand the My Courses menu, click on the university partner, and then click on a course. You will be taken to a page that lists all the modules of that course. Each week, a new module is released and it is displayed here. The navigation bar at the top right of the page provides you with quick and personalized navigation. Here you will see two drop-down menus, your dashboard, named after your username, and My Courses. To reveal your personal menu items, click on the Your Dashboard menu. This is where you can see and make edits to your profile information, access important deadlines, and see your messages. Click on the My Courses menu for easy navigation through the various modules of the course in which you are enrolled. Even though you can study independently, you are supported through your learning journey. If you ever need technical help, you can always send a support request using the Help menu located at the top right of the page. To make your learning experience more meaningful, every module is split into smaller units around learning outcomes. And in each unit you will engage with different learning materials such as notes, infographics, videos, web resources, and presentations. After engaging with these materials, you will bring your learning into immediate application through quizzes, small group discussions, project submissions, and collaborative activities before moving on to the next unit. All courses are based on continuous assessment, which means that you are assisted throughout each course with a good distribution of quizzes, collaborative activities, and ongoing projects. Because you are at the center of the learning experience, you benefit from the freedom of adjusting your schedule to suit your needs. Remember that your learning is in your hands, so embrace this opportunity with as much curiosity and tenacity as you possibly can, and above all, enjoy it.
Wow. So in summary, UNICAF works with reputable international university partners to make postgraduate education flexible, and very affordable and accessible at the same time. And this particular model, lawyers can be able to gain a very international credential. As we were speaking about AI today, you'll be able to strengthen your AI literacy and develop cross-border legal competency. This is how we then move as professionals from the participation aspect to the influence aspect. So the future ready African lawyer will just not be there to understand law. You will be able to understand technology. You'll be able to understand cross-border regulation. You'll be able to understand global markets in summary, because the future of law will not wait, and neither should we. And so under this particular partnership and this webinar that we have held today, I just want to thank you for listening to me. And I'll provide you with the number that you can be able to contact. You can be able to call Sheila right after the webinar or any other day that you are ready. The number is on the screen, 0714 655 897. I'll take that again, 0714 655 897. Again, we will be able to share with you the link of application that has the universities to choose from. And there can never be a better opportunity than this. For the last 2 years that we have partnered with ELS, the first year we had 12 applications. These are students who are already graduating, and unfortunately is not here today, but even one of our students is the CEO of ELS, David Sigano, who we are pleasured and almost getting done with his LLM in the next few months. So this is something that has been tried and tested. The ELS fraternity has made it possible and brought this to your doorstep. We are here to support you in the very, very best way we can to access the scholarship, study at your comfort, and get to graduate without any hassle. So I would like to reiterate what Gabriel has said. LLM and any other course that you'd wish to pursue is very important in the current job market as, as a legal practitioner. The more you delay with our careers, the excuses that we have had in the past is that we are committed, our jobs are demanding, our families are too demanding. This is the time where flexibility has come through, and we will be able to take you through this process seamlessly. And within 2 years, you will be able to graduate to the next level. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I now take, I don't know if Gabriel, you'll be handling the question session. Because I know there are mixed questions from the 3 panelists. And so when my turn comes, I'll be able to respond. As I wind up this, please ensure you have saved the number, Sheila, 0714655897. If you do not have it, reach out to Gabriel and he will be able to assist you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Winnie, for that wonderful presentation. Indeed, colleagues, the UNICA, East Africa Law Society Memorandum of Understanding, as was signed in 2024, is real, it is existent, and indeed you can still upgrade your careers today. As Winnie has said, at the Secretariat, many of us are beneficiaries of the LLMs that are being offered courtesy of UNICAF. And it is true when she talks about the discounts or the scholarships that are offered of up to 80% for any of the courses that you choose to do. So please do not limit yourself. The virtual learning environment is amazing. It's friendly and it's so easy to use. And the fact that you even are given a whole session on how to use the virtual learning environment. So if you're there and you feel the need to upgrade, please do not sit on it, explore it now. You have over 5 world-class universities that are up for grabs. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for you to upskill, upgrade, and take a hold of your career. So we are quickly moving into the audience engagement segment, which is the Q&A segment. Happens that we do not have any question. Okay, I see a question from the chat room, and John is asking you to mention the UK universities. Do we have Sheila or Winnie?
The universities that we have are University of East London, Liverpool, John Moore University, University of Suffolk, the three are in UK, and then we have two UNICAF universities in Zambia and Malawi. I forgot to mention also, Gabriel is one of our students, just in case he did not mention that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, leave your contacts also, your email address and phone number and name, so that you can be able to be called and you can ask more questions of the webinar, because time probably may cut us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. And yeah, so it seems there are no questions. So I'm going to invite participants to probably raise their hands, and we'll give them an opportunity to speak. If you have any question, any comments that you'd like to make from the keynote address given by Judge Peter Herbert, to the wonderful presentation made by Ms. Diana Claire Angwech, and then to the last presentation that you've just had about the opportunities for you to upskill that has been made by Winnie Rachel. Please do raise your hand up, ask a question, and do not sit on it. But while we wait for those questions, I probably want to invite back our panelists. And I have a question for each of you, just one question that I'll request each of our panelists to respond to. And the question is, if you each had to prescribe one deliberate action a lawyer should take within the next 12 months to strengthen global competence, what would it be? That one action, one decision, one shift, what would it be? Judge Peter Herbert.
Yeah, thank you. That's quite a question. I think it depends where you are. There's different countries, different experiences, but I think volunteering within civil society about actually doing some community work is probably one of the best learning keys for a lawyer. It's not immediately obvious. It doesn't necessarily mean to go and doing an internship at Norton Rose or one of the major US law firms, or even one of the major law firms on the continent, which there are many, but actually go into the community and become a community advocate for a farmer who can't get agricultural produce, go and help represent or advocate for a young woman who has faced sexual violence, for a young person who cannot get into school, or help a person to access a scholarship through UNICAF, not because they don't have the ability, but because simply they don't have the resources to do so. So I think I would advocate doing some community service. And what you get back is you gain enormous experience, and you gain the sort of empathy and understanding that Diana was speaking about, in that you enhance your own social skills as well as giving back to the community. That would be my most important piece of advice for a young lawyer to do in the next 12 months.
Wow, thank you, Judge Peter. But also, maybe since you have the flow, maybe your parting shots in a minute.
Well, we just a quick advertisement. We are Bandung Africa have a webinar actually next Thursday, February 26th, from 5 till 7 p.m. www.bandungafrica.com, where we're trying to discuss, or will be discussing, African migration to the north, and also diaspora settlement to the continent. And in the end of March, with the Mombasa Law Society, we'll be discussing freedom of speech and association, which is rather topical these days anywhere in the world, but particularly in East Africa. So be a member, come and join, and we'll have an exciting set of platforms. An annual conference coming up in Addis Ababa in November, joining the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent in Geneva, the Palais de Justice, from the 14th to the 17th of April, and lots of other exciting items, some of which will be done in partnership with EALS. So there's the end of my pitch. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Judge Peter, for that wonderful invitation. I do guarantee that a number of our members will be part of that conversation. And now I move to you, Diana. That one deliberate action a lawyer should take within the next 12 months to strengthen global competence, and your parting shots, please.
Thank you, Gabby. Mine would be thought leadership for any lawyer at this point in time. I think one of the things that joins the nation is human rights and humanitarian actions. We want to see more thought leadership in how government is interacting with their citizens. What can we do better as the legal fraternity to strengthen laws across the world, because one jurisdiction affects the other. And so it's important that we have lawyers rise to a place where they are giving their thoughts and leading the discussions in regard to humanitarian actions, in regard to the politics of governments and people. How can we do that better? What can we do? I think that this will set you apart and enable you have other jurisdictions pay attention to what's happening, because whether we like it or not, each of us is affected on the global scale. When we speak about war in another country, it affects the country. When Ukraine and Russia went to war, you had the oil crisis. What can we do? What can we do better? And I think that thought leadership in that area would go a long way to put someone on the global space and be relevant. It may not be able to. It will get you attention, but also we need people to drive the direction and discussion for the world leaders and people at large, and the leaders in any nation, especially East Africa, to begin to discuss the critical issues that affect human rights across the globe. And so that would be my one thing, Gabby. I have very many things to say, but that would be my one thing that comes off my mind. My parting shots are, if you want to be competent and you want to be relevant in the next coming years, you can never stop learning. You can never stop upskilling yourself. I was very interested in the last presentation by Winnie, because I know that that's an area that whether you have a master's or not, you can jump right into. And so never stop learning, never stop upskilling, never stop challenging yourself to do better, because when you do that, you open space for yourself, and as you go up, take many people with you into the room, because only then can you survive. Thank you, Gabby.
Well, thank you, Diana. Now, finally, to you, Winnie. One deliberate action a lawyer should take within the next 12 months to strengthen global competence, and your parting shot.
Thank you, Gabriel. I would say choose a clear area of specialization. Instead of being general, decide on a focused practice area. Just like Diana has mentioned, I think you can choose corporate law, family law, tech law, litigation, intellectual property, because, specialization builds expertise and credibility faster than any other thing. Also, I believe invest in continuous professional development courses, that is the CPDs. Ensure you attend the ELS trainings, workshops, conferences to gain that. Gain skills in drafting, negotiation, legal research, and advocacy, just like a judge mentioned, so that you can sharpen consistency. My parting shot today, as I close, is I want to remind us that competence is not built by chance, because you can only choose to. In the next 12 months, be very intentional about growth. Let us choose learning over comfort, mentorship over pride, because sometimes we think we know it. Preparation should get you so that you don't assume you are very well prepared. And, the legal professional demands that you have more knowledge. It demands integrity, courage, and continuous improvement, like the rest of the speakers have said. But above all, it requires your service. If we commit to sharpen our skills, if we embrace technology, if we strengthen our ethics, and understand the needs of our clients, we'll be able not just to practice law, but to shape the impact. So in the next 12 months, all I can tell you is define the trajectory of your careers. And the question is not whether the opportunities will come. The opportunity is here with UNICAF for you to do this, because we also have over 400 short courses, professional development short courses that you can do. So yes, I wish you the very best. We look forward to serving you. Thank you for joining this particular session, and back to you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Winnie, for your parting shots. But before we close it, just allow me to distill this conversation a little bit. Global competence, like we've seen, rests on 5 interlocking pillars. That's intellectual depth, technological literacy, credential credibility, network capital, and strategic clarity. When you remove one of these 5 pillars, the positioning weakens. Today's most powerful insight for me is this, friends. Global relevance is not inherited, it's engineered, like Winnie has just said. The African lawyer of the next decade must not merely integrate into global systems. We must influence, shape, and redefine them. It's on that point, friends, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the East Africa Law Society, on behalf of our president, President Ramadan Abubakar, our CEO, Mr. David Sigano, we would like to extend our deepest appreciation to you, our esteemed panelists, the Honorable Judge Peter Herbert, OBE, Miss Diana Claire Angwech, Miss Winnie Rachel, and to you all participants that have engaged with us with a lot of zeal and passion this afternoon. You are the reason why we keep doing this every day, and your participation keeps giving us reassurance of doing this more and more and more. The future is global, and the only remaining question, like Winnie has said, is, are we preparing for it deliberately? As we log off this afternoon, let's ponder over those thoughts and get to realign. The East Africa Law Society is here for you, and we continue to bring you wonderful partnerships with UNICAF for you to keep upskilling. Our ELS Institute, which offers 2 to 3 webinars every week, is here to help us continue interacting, engaging with experts like our esteemed panelists, and for us to continue growing. And that's why in the month of March, we are planning an AI masterclass. Like you've seen, the future, belongs to those who will learn to master AI. And on the 26th and 27th of March, we will be having an AI masterclass happening in Nairobi, and we are doing this in partnership with Enablify, and we'll soon advertise and share those materials with you to register and be part of that discussion. From us to you, the entire Secretariat of the East Africa Law Society, we wish you all a very lovely afternoon and a very blessed day ahead. Be on the lookout for more of our sessions. Next week, we have 3 very lovely sessions coming up. And boy, they're quite exciting. You do not want to miss them. Thank you all. We'll share a recording of this session with you all. Please follow us at East Africa Law Society on our socials, Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post all these training materials for you to go back and re-listen to them. We thank you all, and goodbye. You can now exit at leisure. Thank you.